FunSpot America currently owns 3 amusement parks, one in Kissimmee, one in Orlando, and one in Atlanta. And of the 3 parks, my favorite is easily the Kissimmee location. In this video, I will give my review of FunSpot Kissimmee and explain why I think it's the best park in the FunSpot chain. FunSpot Kissimmee is adjacent, but technically separate to the Old Town shopping and entertainment complex next door. Old Town originally opened in 1986 and over the next few years started installing their own amusement rides, including most notably the Windstorm coaster. The site also became home to a few other unaffiliated amusements such as the Old Town Slingshot and the world's tallest SkyCoaster, the latter of which was erected in 1997 and stands a whopping 300 feet tall. In 2004, FunSpot purchased the SkyCoaster, hoping to build a second park around it. FunSpot's owners had tried unsuccessfully to expand in the 1990s with locations in Myrtle Beach and Virginia Beach. However, those 2 locations were not as successful as their original Orlando location. But the Kissimmee project was a success. In 2007, the park was rebranded as FunSpot USA and slowly began to transform into the park we know today. Meanwhile, the rides owned by the Old Town complex itself closed in 2014, and FunSpot has started using that land to erect their own amusement rides. As a result, FunSpot has a pretty weird layout. The main area of the park was built around the aforementioned SkyCoaster. The SkyCoaster is located smack dab in the middle of the park on a pond, which makes for an impressive centerpiece. The rest of the rides and attractions in this area are located around the perimeter of this pond. Roughly 80% of the park's rides are in this section of the park, including 3 of the park's 4 coasters. The park also has another sizable section in the very back of Old Town. To reach this section, you actually have to leave FunSpot entirely, and it's a solid 5-minute walk back through all of Old Town's food and shopping options. And honestly, I do wonder how many people know of this area's existence. Every time I've visited FunSpot, this section has been a complete ghost town. Until recently, the area was home to just a few spinning and kiddie rides, but in 2019, FunSpot added Hurricane to this area, the relocated E&F Miler coaster from Wild Adventures. Last but not least, FunSpot also has a Ferris wheel near Old Town's entrance alongside the main road. With 3 distinct areas and open gates, FunSpot Kissimmee feels sorta like Morey's Piers. And the Old Town district is analogous to the boardwalk for Morey's Piers. And I think that's a good comparison because this place really does feel like one of those boardwalk or seaside parks. Arguably the biggest strength of FunSpot is its operating calendar. FunSpot Kissimmee is open 365 days a year, and more often than not, they're open from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m., even in the off-season. As a result, I often find myself at FunSpot after the larger parks have closed for the night. In terms of pricing, FunSpot is a bit polarizing in that area. When you compare FunSpot Kissimmee to most regional parks, it seems pretty pricey. An all-day wristband prices in at $46 to $54. But there are a few things to consider. 1, this is Orlando. Compared to the area's other parks, FunSpot is the discount chain. Their wristbands are half the cost of the area's largest parks, and parking is free. 2, FunSpot includes Go-Karts, an attraction that is usually an upcharge at most parks. 3, the Mega Fun Pass is just $8 more than the basic wristband, and it includes 1 ride on the record-breaking SkyCoaster. SkyCoasters alone are usually $20 to $30 upcharges at most amusement parks. So if you view FunSpot's maximum $54 wristband as a $30 ticket plus the upcharge cost of the SkyCoaster and Go-Karts, it suddenly seems much more reasonable. But if you'd prefer, you can buy individual ride tickets. The major coasters price in at about $10 per ride, so if you want to get re-rides, and I'm willing to bet you will on Mindblower and possibly Hurricane, you should look into the all-day wristband. Or if you find yourself in Florida quite a bit or wanting to get to visit the other FunSpot locations, I strongly recommend the Season Pass. I live in Massachusetts, yet I own a FunSpot Season Pass. Another major advantage Fun Spot has over the area's other parks is the crowd levels. The coasters are usually walk-ons, and the worst wait you'll find is 15 to 20 minutes, usually for the go-karts. But that's mostly because the go-karts give you such a long ride. Now speaking of those go-karts, those multi-level tracks are Fun Spot's original claim to fame. The Orlando location has more tracks than Kissimmee, but I prefer the 2 tracks at the Kissimmee location. The star for me is the Vortex track, which is the best set of go-karts I have ridden anywhere. The track is 4 stories high, and it includes this crazy moment when you speed down the steep drop, whip around a banked curve, and continue down another drop. I cannot think of any other go-kart track with a banked turn, and this element feels completely out of control. A lot of riders will fishtail here or wipe out, so I'm surprised I've never seen a major collision take place. Moving on to the coasters, the star is Mindblower, the ultra-compact Gravity Group wooden coaster. Now this coaster is an aggressive little ride. It's loaded with ejector airtime pops, and it's also one of the rare woodies to include an inversion. The coaster is definitely a bit on the rougher side, but ultimately I consider it to be a great coaster because of how intense it is. And personally, I prefer Mindblower to Fun Spot Orlando's White Lightning, but I know that's a split opinion among enthusiasts. The other notable coaster is Hurricane, one of the rare adult coasters ever built by E&F Myler. Like Mindblower, this is not the smoothest ride out there. The high-speed turn after the second drop is brutal, but the rest of the ride has some really solid airtime. I have separate reviews for both Mindblower and Hurricane if you're interested in hearing more in-depth thoughts about either ride. The park's other 2 coasters are clones, a kiddie coaster, fittingly called Kitty Coaster, and a Zamperla spinner called Galaxy Spin. The most interesting thing about the latter is that it was relocated from Cypress Gardens and until recently was known as the Rockstar Coaster. But the biggest thrill in the entire park is the SkyCoaster, and it's probably one of the scariest rides in the world. Keep in mind this SkyCoaster is 2 times taller than most, and even those smaller ones are pretty darn terrifying. I strongly recommend springing the extra cash for the SkyCoaster because it's a blissful adrenaline rush, and you really feel that added height in both the visuals and length of the drop. And that drop is why I keep coming back. The feeling of diving 300 feet towards the ground only to be yanked skywards at the last second by a cable is incredible. One thing I do not recommend though is the Sky Sled seating configuration. This is one of the few locations to offer the traditional flight suit or the Sky Sled. Rather than riding in a flying position, the Sky Sled has you sitting in this harness, and it is not comfortable in the least bit. The harness binds up in the crotch, and it's easy to smack your neck on the harness on the descent. The drop also doesn't feel quite as intense because you're not staring at the ground for the descent. It feels a bit more like a drop tower. The one positive with this seating arrangement is that the view is arguably more imposing because you can see the winch and cables mere inches from your face. The rest of the park's offerings consist of a series of flat rides, several that have been interchanged over the years. The 2 most notable are the Hot Seat Scream and Swing that swings out over the lake, and Headrush 360, the inverting frisbee. So those are my thoughts on Fun Spot Kissimmee. Ultimately, I think this is Fun Spot's best park because of the boardwalk-like atmosphere and ride collection. Mindblower and Hurricane are 2 solid coasters, and it's really nice being able to essentially marathon them whenever I want. Plus, you have one of the best adrenaline rushes in the world in that record-breaking SkyCoaster. This park is well worth visiting to cap off an evening in Orlando after leaving one of the area's larger parks. What are your thoughts on Fun Spot Kissimmee? Are you a fan of this park? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down below. Subscribe for more amusement park reviews here at Canopy Coaster, and thank you for listening.